Welcome back to the Sports News Analysis YouTube channel, your home for NFL talk here on YouTube. My name is Mike. Once again, guys, I'm coming at you with some NFL free agent rumors and analysis. And we start off today with two members of the Denver Broncos, and the first of those being Eric Decker. And Eric Decker is, far and away probably the best NFL free agent wide receiver available in this year's class. That's been well documented. He's coming off two very highly productive seasons with Peyton Manning at the helm for the Broncos at the quarterback position. And thus, I think his value is a little bit inflated. And I especially think that when you hear reports come out today that he's looking for a contract in the neighborhood of $9 million per year. And undoubtedly, Decker and his agent are both looking at the contract that was given to Greg Jennings last year, in which he did earn, an average of $9 million per year in a contract from the Vikings. And I know that might be where Decker and his team, want the contract to be. But when I look at Decker, I don't look at him as a guy that defenses game plan for. And to me, when you're getting into that $8, $9, $10 million range for a receiver, it better be a guy that teams have to game plan for and really be well aware of from the first snap to the last snap. I don't look at Decker as being one of those guys. He wasn't even that guy on the Broncos, where guys like Demaryius Thomas, Wes Welker, and you can even make an argument maybe even Julius Thomas are more game plan for than Decker. When you're talking $9 million a year, yeah, there's some mistakes that were made in giving, let's say Greg Jennings $9 million a year, Dwayne Bowe, who gets annually an average of $11 million per year under the contract he's under now. You take those two outliers out, you're looking at guys like in that neighborhood of Deshaun Jackson, Andre Johnson, receivers I put at a whole nother level in that $9 million a year mark, above a guy like Decker. I think a contract for Decker that works for all parties is one that doesn't exceed $7 million per year. I think if you're a team and you can get Decker for $7 million per year, maybe as high as $8 if you really prioritize him, that's about his ceiling in my mind, and as high as you should go. To me, Victor Cruz gets about $8.5 million a year. He's probably the highest I would pay a guy that's not an outside stud receiver. And I don't look at Decker as being one of those guys. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know. But again, Decker, $9 million a year. No thanks, I'll pass. And another free agent who I was very intrigued by all season for the Broncos is the restricted free agent cornerback, Chris Harris. And, the Broncos are expected to place a second-round tender on the 25-year-old cornerback who tore his ACL late in the season during the playoffs. And, he's a guy that, I hold in high esteem. And I think if he was healthy, he'd be a guy that they should place a first-round tender on, coming off a very good season, in that Broncos secondary, and also the fact that he's only 25. I think the Broncos did a good job placing, they're going to do a good job placing that second-round tender on him, because there would definitely be teams, even with him coming off of an injury, if they had placed a third or fourth-round tender on Chris Harris, there would have been a team that came along and scooped him up. He's that good of a young player. He can play inside as a corner. He can play outside as a corner, and it really would be a building block in my mind for future Broncos secondaries once he comes back from his ACL injury. Moving on from a guy who's recovering from an ACL to a guy who came back from an ACL this year in Brent Grimes of the Dolphins. And Grimes, well documented, signed a prove-it contract last offseason with the Dolphins for 1 year at about $5 million. And boy, did that pay off in spades for the Dolphins. Grimes had an excellent season, really led that secondary to being, much better than had been in recent past. I think you can credit two guys with that renaissance, and that's Brent Grimes and the overall consistent play of Chris Clemons, the safety, both of whom are free agents, most notably Grimes. And with the Dolphins, with over $30 million in cap space, with how they frivolously spent money last year in positions they probably didn't need, if I'm the Dolphins, first and foremost, I'm securing Grimes, okay? Then what I'm doing is I'm going after a tackle to hopefully begin to solidify that offensive line, something they should have done last year when Jake Long decided to move on to St. Louis. So if I'm Miami, I'm signing Grimes to a longer-term deal, 3-4 year deal for the 30-year-old corner, I think would be enough. Then you sign, in my mind, Brandon Albert at left tackle, and then take that leftover money, because there will be some left, because, again, they have a boatload of cap space, and make sure you re-sign Chris Clemons. And after you do that, then worry about all the other free agents. But to me, the signing of Grimes is going to be absolutely crucial in the future success of that Dolphins defense, who I think is building something here and can be good. And another guy to look for them to sign, one of their own free agents, is Paul Soliai, who I think some of that money should be devoted to as well. So, sometimes you look at the big pricey free agents like the Dolphins did last year, and to me, this year, it's about them keeping their core guys, Soliai, Grimes, and Clemens, and also making a run at a left tackle, and they seem to be very high on Brandon Albert. Moving from the Dolphins to the Panthers, and the Panthers' big free agent, well documented, is Greg Hardy. And with only about $16 million in cap space as of now, that's before anyone's released, that's before any restructuring. You look at a guy like Hardy, he's going to demand, between 10 and 12 million, 10 million minimum on the open market per year. So, I don't really see any way they're going to be able to sign him at the money he's going to get unless they get some major restructuring there with some of their current players. And that Charles Johnson contract is really hamstringing them right now. He signed a $78 million deal with $32 million guaranteed, the highest contract in the whole history of the franchise, okay, which is really an anchor on that salary cap right now, and is probably going to be what prevents them from re-signing Hardy. You already hear they're interested in bringing back other free agents of their own, such as Mike Mitchell, the safety, who will come at a lot less of a cost. But again, I'm trying to figure out a way they can get Hardy back without spending almost all of the money they have in cap space to retain him and field a good roster, after they resign him, and I'm just really not seeing it. So, I don't really see a way, unless they get some major restructuring again, that Greg Hardy will be back as a member of the Panthers. And last but not least, just sort of an off-the-radar thing to address that came out today regarding the Bengals, and the thinking that the Bengals want to kick Andrew Whitworth from left tackle into guard, okay, and then re-sign their own free agent at tackle, Anthony Collins. And I think this is a good move because you had a guy in Collins who showed a lot of promise late in the season at the tackle position, and you have a guy in Whitworth who could still play. So why not take advantage of the fact that Whitworth is a multi-dimensional player and can be kicked into guard, and then re-sign Collins, who won't come cheap, because remember, I know he's a backup last year, but he's a top 5 offensive tackle in this free agent class, and he's a guy who also happens to be able to play the left tackle position. And when you look at a contract like the Giants gave Will Beatty in the not-so-distant past, I think it was like a 6-year, $38 million deal, that's probably what it's going to take to bring back a guy like Collins. But Collins, remember, the Bengals, remember, are well under the salary cap as they normally are. They're probably not going to be able to re-sign a guy like Michael Johnson, given the big deals they gave to Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap. So why not dedicate some of that money to protect Andy Dalton and to open up some running lanes, re-sign Collins, push Whitworth into guard, and you're still keeping that core of your team. Something the Bengals have really been trying to do here the last couple years, retain their own free agents, which I think is good as long as the free agents you're retaining are quality players, which the Bengals obviously have. I know there's a lot of bagging on the Bengals and how they can't win in the playoffs, but let's not forget, they made the playoffs 3 years in a row, and there's not many teams in the NFL that can say that. So, but guys, that's my breakdown of some of the rumors we've been hearing today in free agency. Let me know what you think. Hit me up in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter as well. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, guys. Doing all kinds of videos in the off-season here regarding free agency and the draft. So be sure to subscribe. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.